Could we see a possible crazy finish to the college football season? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. It's championship weekend. You know this is the place to lock it in at the end when it all is on the line. We got Steve Merrill here from Wager Talk. Steve stops by each and every week, is kind enough to give us his selections and betting edge on a number of the key games across college football, and we're squeezing Steve dry with all the conference championship games this weekend, including a huge one, Steve. USC, Utah. Utes won a very entertaining game down to the wire, 2-point conversion at the end, controversial finish. There was a pass interference that set up and gave Utah new life to score the game-winning touchdown, 43-42 at home. But this time, neutral site, Utah playing for a conference championship that they're defending, but USC playing for a playoff spot is a 2-point favorite.
Yeah, and to be honest, in my raw power ratings, my database projection, even if you look at like the Sagergan ratings, Utah is the higher rated team this year. So USC is currently top 4 in the playoff rankings, and they're not even the best team in their own conference, which is exactly what the numbers say. And I think this is a dangerous spot for them. And look, USC is a very explosive offensive team, likely Heisman winner at quarterback, so we know they can get it done offensively. They take care of the ball, by the way. They've had 1 turnover or less in like 7 straight games, and that's not a fluke because, once again, a very good quarterback is going to probably win the Heisman. So they don't turn the ball over, but at some point that's going to catch up to you, and you can't keep playing perfect, clean games offensively, especially when your defense has gotten even worse statistically. They went into the season last week averaging allowing 6.1. Now they allow 6.2 after last week's high-scoring game against Notre Dame. On the season, they give up 6.2 yards per play against teams that average just 6.0. That is not a top 4 defense in the nation, to say the least. And I think at some point the offense can't keep carrying them, especially against a good defensive underdog like Utah. Getting back to the database projection, 10,000 Simulations has this game at a pick'em, basically USC by half to be exact. My power ratings also favor favor Utah by a couple on a neutral field, like I said. So we'll see how this plays out in Vegas because it is a neutral field. Both teams should travel fairly well here at Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play. I think this is an upset potential here. You know, I think either TCU or USC or both lose this week. They're both 2.5-point favorites. Isn't that ironic? 3 is the key number. When you get to 2.5 or less, you're saying the teams only have about a 54% chance to win straight up. So mathematically, it is unlikely that both TCU and USC win this week as small favorites, which gets that discussion going on Ohio State, Alabama. I mean, you would assume with both off, Ohio State being 5th in the rankings would be ahead of Alabama right now. But one of them is going to sneak in, and the fun begins if both TCU and USC lose. But I think USC goes down this week, so that's one. And tune into the other channels to find out what I think about the TCU game.
Possible letdown factor here, Steve, could be, first of all, Utah doesn't anticipate college football playoff appearances. I think they're a highly motivated team. Kyle Whittingham has a tremendous program. They play for Pac-12 championships. I think this means a lot to them. USC, of course, playing for a playoff berth, that would seem to be the ultimate motivating factor. However, after a pretty light schedule, it's completely backloaded. They had a really rough game, tough game down to the wire with UCLA.
Right.
Then not necessarily a close game, but a physical game against Notre Dame. So they got to get up 3 consecutive weeks now, and this one on a short week. So against a physical Utah team.
Yeah, and Mark, keep in mind, both games the last couple of weeks, were tight. And like you said, competitive, high-scoring games. Getting back to the turnovers again, USC had a 6-1 turnover edge the last 2 games against UCLA and Notre Dame. They had a 4-1 edge against UCLA and only won by 3. So this is a team that's been playing kind of on borrowed time. And let's not forget the one loss they had this season, of course, was against this Utah Utes team. So they've already lost to them. Now, that was on the road, thin air altitude, 1-point loss. But they also had a 1-0 turnover edge in that game. So I think these two teams are very equal. And you bring up a really good point about motivation. This is bigger than the bowl game is going to be for Utah, right? Because this is for a conference championship, whereas USC just wants to get by. They really have nothing to gain in this game, which is a terrible situation to be in. They'd almost be better off if they weren't playing in this game, which is kind of screwed up. And that's one of the arguments we have against some of these conference championships. But I think there's a lot of angles pointing to Utah, and I think overall they're the better team on top of that.
And I forgot to mention, Utah played the worst Power 5 team in the nation last week and rolled up 63 points. And you want to see one of the more statistical mismatches in a Power 5 game this year? Check out the box score of Utah and Colorado. So they waltzed last week. It was basically a scrimmage to prepare for this game. And if you don't think that they were preparing for USC, then You're crazy. All right, Steve's selections on wagertalk.com. Check it out right there. Wagertalk.com with Steven is under the radar selection. That's exclusive to us. We are the lucky ones at the Voice of College Football community because Steve's 11-1 against the spread on his under the radar selections. Get those at patreon.com. Search Mark Rogers TV. Thank you, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Mark.